From the Roman banquets that often ended in huge bacchanalia without many rules, to the obligation of loyalty imposed by the Catholic religion and still present in our legal system. What has changed in the sexuality of Italians? How we live our intimacy? We find out in the episode of Brave Italian World, as always after the initials. Brave Italian World. How you live defines who you are. Here we talk about experiences and society from an Italian point of view and more. Hi everyone and welcome again to this news episode of this podcast. Today we will talk about sexuality in Italy, making a complete reasoning without using turn-off words or without being shy. It's very difficult, especially when we are speaking with the boomer generation. There is the risk of breaking down one social image that we have towards the interlocutor. Of course, like always, exception to what I said before are possible, but in general this is the true. But if you want to find some exception, you can find it in people between 19 and 25 years old. The youngest generation, it's identifiable like Generation Z. Understand how sexuality is experienced in Italy. It's absolutely necessary to start from the assumption that this is a very ancient concept and has a really ancient origins. So let's start from Rome. Italians like to trace their origins back to Roman time. However, not all the aspects of this era are always considered. Pompeii, it's a city near Naples that has been preserved exactly as it was left by Romans. By the way, the place is very suggestive and I recommend you to visit it at least one time in your life. That's just an example, but in this city there is the House of Faun, that in Latin Domus, that contains some of the many erotic stuff that you can find in Roman arts. The erotic art that you can find in Pompeii and Polano was found during the 19th century. The city is full of erotic art, both in the form of frescoes, painting and sculptures. You can even find objects with the phallic symbolism, and this symbolism it's very elated and it's really clear that it's a sexual symbolism. All these findings were considered by their discoverers to be really pornographic, so almost all those discoveries were immediately hidden from being viewed by people and locked in warehouse without the possibility to access from the public. To access it, you had to ask the permission, but it wasn't always really easy to have it. From this stuff that we have found, we can understand how the Roman culture was very more liberal compared to our today's culture. But to be sincere, much of what might seem exclusively erotic to us, it has also another type of symbolism. It has a symbolism that refers himself to the fertility of nature in a bucolic sense, in a completely connected sense with humanity that is connected with nature. We can also consider it like a symbolism of good luck and a good luck talisman. For example, we can find also an erotic pulse that is really large and big, and this can mean an erotic meaning, but also a meaning of fertility and that you will have a lot of child, that it's very important in that culture. So that was very important in that culture, so maybe we can that also in that way if we want. But in any case, the cultural shock produced by those discoveries had led to hide it for most find. For example, a moral fresco depicting their sexual gods with an exceptionally gifted penis, both inside and lens, was covered by plasters. This painting was discovered just in the 1998. In the 1819, when King Francisco I, that was the king of two Sicily, visited the exhibition dedicated to Pompeii at the National Archaeological Museum of Naples, was completely embarrassed for the works that were content, and the content was so explicit, sexual, so he decided to collect everything inside a special room called a secret cabinet. The room was made accessible only to people of mature age and proved respect and morality. Some stupid people in 1848 proposed the total destruction of that art because it was something that was immoral, but the director of the museum managed to save the findings through diplomatic actions. We can call it forbidden art, and that forbidden art was briefly made accessible under the late 1960s, but was only reopened completely to the public only in this actual century. Children under 14 are not yet allowed to enter it, and the visit alone of that department it's allowed only in the presence of a tutor or a written authorization. Now we talk about the advent of Christianity. Christianity was born in the Roman colonies. In 313, the Emperor Constantine and Licinius allowed the religion to be freely professed within the borders of the empire. This legal act is known in the history of law as Edict of Milan. Christianity in this period was considered like a sect of the Jewish religion. In any case, especially in Italy, the pagan and polytheistic religion remained the dominant, even if in decline. In a short time, and for various regions that we don't have time to explain here, the army and also a lot of influential politicians began to convert to Christianity. In the 380, the Thessalonica Edict was issued, which made the Catholic religion mandatory. With this act, Catholicism was made a state religion, and polytheistic cults were completely banned. During the Roman Empire, sexual freedom was very, very open, and with the advent of Christianity, people began to be, we can say, forced to be observed a very strict morality. Christian members had an obligation of loyalty to their spouse. Sexual acts could only be carried out with marriage and only to procreate. There was no type of divorce. Only later there was created the possibility of cancelling the marriage only in extremely serious cases, and it was really expensive. According to the canons of the Catholic religion, some of those serious facts were impotence, inability to procreate, and bad faith. Any type of sexual act was completely forbidden to give or to obtain pleasure. Any type of authoritism was forbidden. Also to be gay was forbidden. Any form of abortion was prohibited. With the increase of medical skills, euthanasia became possible, but it was also explicitly banned. Contraception was also prohibited. Those contraints, those stuff, it's still valid for the canonical law, so the law of the church, let's say, at least the Roman one, the Vatican one. Civil revolution and the modern age. The religious obligation regarding marriage were valid until 1960. Also under the Italian law, abortion was banned until 1968, but it's currently, in a practical way, we're talking, very difficult to practice, since many doctors declare themselves to be conscientious objector and they don't want to do this practice. Condoms were widely known in Italy after the end of the Second World War, thanks to the American troops on the Italian territory. Someone can say that it was really known that there was something like condoms, but it was in the high society and it wasn't available for everyone, but just for rich people. After the Second World War, it became available almost to everyone, but we will talk about it later in this podcast. So we were saying that the condom became available thanks to the American troops in Italy. In some dialects, condoms are still called goldoni because of the gold one that was, I think, the brand of the condoms that were used by the American soldiers. Hormonal contraception came to America in 1958. It arrived in Europe in 1961. Initially, Italy access was granted only to adults and married women who had to express the consent of their husband, and the husband needed to be there to express his consent. Currently, euthanasia is still prohibited. In the December of the 2017, the biological act will, we can call it, was approved. This allows an individual to exercise his refusal of treatment in advance. We can say also that the possibility of refusing life-saving treatment was implicitly granted by the Italian constitution that was approved after the Second World War. We can't call it euthanasia, but currently it's possible to let someone die for his own illnesses if he wanted, and it's also possible to use anesthetic in order to not let him feel the pain. In any case, it's not allowed to use medicine to poison someone and cause him the death. I'm not able to say in the medical term in English, but we can call it poison someone, but you can understand what I mean. The real access to contraception, it's still really difficult for many people, especially under the age of 18. There are many reasons. For example, the price of contraception, it's very high for young boys and women. 12 condoms cost about 17 euros. The contraceptive pill can cost between 15 and 30 euros for a month, depending of the brands and a lot of stuff that you need or you don't need. It depends from the pill. The funny, if we can call it funny, the funny thing is that contraception should be free according to a law that was approved in the 1975, and another law in 1978 said that contraception should be free, but those laws have never been respected. Access to those stuff, to contraception, it's in fact very limited, especially for the youngest. It's often possible to find boys who have already had a sexual relationship or more than one, but without a real knowledge of the scientific means, and they don't know the scientific means available to fight disease and to avoid unwanted pregnancies. Usually I end with the episode with a message of hope. Sexuality in Italy has for a long time being restrictive. Some foreign newspapers have come to say that whatever is fun in Italy, it's either impossible or illegal. Unfortunately, this is also the thought of many guys who live in Italy. The state too often wants to be the dictator of an old morality. Laws were often created to shape mind rather to regulating existing phenomena. Sexuality, we can call it like an invisible theme. It exists, but it is ignored. The situation is really slowly changing with the awareness of many young boys, but it will take a long time before the more progressive idea become laws. As always, there is a great potential to explore in Italy. Only time will tell us if it was really be put to use or not. Before concluding the podcast, I inform you that I'm opening a new series of podcasts, and yeah, there I will speak in Italian. Quindi, that means just so, you will be informed with other details and with the release date in the next episode of Brave Italian World. And here we are again, we have reached the end of the podcast. Thank you all for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with your friends. I'm very interested in your opinion and your comments. You can comment by following the link below or using the hashtag braveitalianworld on Twitter. See you soon with the next episode of Brave Italian World. Bye!